I spent $2,847 on coffee last year, and the coffee wasn't the problem. I know what you're thinking. This is another Stop Buying Lattes video. Another lecture about how your morning coffee is the reason you're not a millionaire. Another personal finance guru telling you that $6 a day adds up to $2,000 a year, and if you just invested that money instead, you'd retire 5 years earlier and own a beach house. I've heard that lecture 100 times. I've rolled my eyes at it 100 times. And I'm not going to give it to you because that math is lazy. It's incomplete. And more importantly, it completely misses the point. The coffee isn't what cost me $2,847. The coffee was just the anchor. The small, reasonable purchase that made everything else feel equally reasonable. The real cost was everything I bought because I was already buying coffee. I tracked every coffee-related purchase for a full year. Not just the drinks, but everything that came with them. The pastries, the tips, the while I'm here additions, the subscriptions I forgot I signed up for. The equipment at home that was supposed to save me money but didn't. And I found something that changed how I think about daily purchases entirely. I'm Kai. I make videos about money traps disguised as smart decisions. If you've ever told yourself it's just coffee while your bank account quietly disagreed, this one's for you. Let me start with the obvious number. I buy coffee almost every weekday, sometimes twice. I work from home now, but I still leave the house for coffee because sitting in my apartment all day makes me feel like I'm losing my mind. Coffee shops are my office, my social life, and my excuse to wear real clothes. Average coffee purchase, $6.20. That includes the occasional oat milk upcharge, the large instead of medium, the extra shot when I'm tired. Frequency, about 5 times a week, with some weeks hitting 6 or 7 when deadlines pile up. Let's call it 260 purchases a year. 260 times $6.20 equals $1,612. That's the number everyone focuses on. That's the latte factor math. $1,600 a year on coffee, scandalous, irresponsible, the reason millennials can't buy houses. But that number is incomplete. It's not wrong. It's just the beginning. Because I didn't spend $1,612 on coffee. I spent $2,847 on coffee-related purchases. The gap between those two numbers, $1,235, is where the real story lives. Let me show you where it went. Cost number 1, the pastry tax. I don't buy a pastry every time I get coffee, but I buy one more often than I'd like to admit. Maybe I skipped breakfast, and I'm hungry. Maybe the croissant in the display case looks particularly good today. Maybe I'm stressed, and a cookie feels like self-care. Maybe it's been a hard week, and I deserve something sweet. Whatever the reason, I add food to my coffee order about 30% of the time. That number surprised me when I tracked it. I would have guessed 10%. I would have said, I rarely get a pastry. But the receipts told a different story. 30% of 260 purchases is 78 pastry purchases a year. Average pastry cost, $4.50. 78 times $4.50 equals $351. $351 in pastries I bought because I was already at the counter, already had my wallet out, already in the mindset of treating myself. $351 in food I didn't plan to buy and wouldn't have eaten if I'd stayed home. I wouldn't have eaten those pastries if I'd made coffee at home. I wouldn't have walked past a bakery case. I wouldn't have been standing there, waiting for my drink, staring at a croissant that suddenly seemed essential to my happiness. The coffee created the context. The pastry was the consequence. Cost number 2, the social friction. This includes everything that comes with coffee as a social ritual, the tips, the treating, the performative generosity that turns a $6 drink into something more expensive. First, the tips. I tip on coffee. Average, $1.25 per purchase. Sometimes I round up, sometimes I hit the 20% button without thinking, sometimes I tip extra because the barista remembered my order. 260 purchases times 125 equals $325 a year in tips alone. When people say coffee costs $6, they're not including the $1.25 they added at checkout. But it's still money that left my account because I bought coffee. And then there's buying coffee for other people. Coffee is social. That's part of why I like it. I meet friends for coffee. I take catch-up meetings over lattes. Let's grab coffee is the universal invitation for let's have a low-stakes conversation. And when I'm the one who suggested it, I often pay. Sometimes because I got there first and ordered for both of us. Sometimes because the other person reaches for their wallet and I wave them off. It feels generous, or I want to seem like the kind of person who picks up tabs. I bought coffee for others about 30 times last year. That's 30 times $6 extra, $180 in treating that felt like connection but was really just habit. Total social friction, $505 a year in tips and treating that I wouldn't have spent if coffee weren't a social ritual. Cost number 3, the while I'm here lunch. This one surprised me the most. About once a week, my coffee trip turns into lunch. Not because I plan to eat lunch there, but because I'm already sitting down. I've been working for a few hours, I'm hungry, and the menu is right there on the table. The decision happens almost unconsciously. I came for coffee. But now it's 12:30, my stomach is growling, and walking home to make a sandwich feels like an interruption. The path of least resistance is to just order something. Ordering lunch at a coffee shop instead of going home or eating what I meal prepped costs me, on average, $14. Sometimes it's a $12 sandwich. Sometimes it's a $16 salad with a side. Sometimes it's a breakfast burrito that somehow costs $15 even though it's just eggs and beans. Call it $14 on average. Once a week for 50 weeks, I'll be generous and assume 2 weeks of vacation where I didn't do this, equals 50 lunches. 50 times 14 equals $700. $700 in lunches I wouldn't have bought if I'd made coffee at home. $700 that doesn't show up in my coffee spending because it's technically food. This is the hidden math of coffee culture. The coffee isn't just a drink, it's a location. And once you're in that location, you make different decisions than you would have made at home. At home, lunch is whatever's in the fridge. At a coffee shop, lunch is a menu with prices. At home, you eat because you're hungry. At a coffee shop, you eat because it's there and you're already sitting down and it feels weird to just leave. The coffee created the context. The lunch was the consequence. Cost number 4, the subscription trap. At some point last year, I signed up for a coffee subscription. One of those unlimited drinks for $30 a month deals that seemed like an incredible value given how much coffee I drink. And mathematically, it was. If I'm spending $6.20 per drink and I visit 12 times a month, I'm getting $74 worth of coffee for $30. That's a savings of $44 a month. Over a year, that's over $500 in savings. The math was obvious. The decision was easy. Except, the subscription changed my behavior in ways I didn't anticipate. I started going more often because the coffee was free. I'd already paid for the month, so every additional visit felt like I was extracting value rather than spending money. I went from 5 visits a week to 6 or 7. I started bringing friends because I could get them a drink too. Some plans included a guest drink. That sounds generous, but it meant I was at the coffee shop more often, in situations where I was more likely to buy food or stay longer. I started treating the subscription like a sunk cost that needed to be maximized rather than a budget that needed to be managed. The psychology flipped from, should I buy coffee today, to I'd be wasting money if I didn't go. And every time I went for my free coffee, I bought something else. A pastry, because I was already there. A lunch, because I was already sitting down. A bag of beans to take home, because they were on sale. A gift card for someone's birthday, because I was at the register anyway. The subscription cost me $360 for the year. But the behavioral change, the increased frequency, the might-as-well purchases, the feeling that I was beating the system while the system was quietly beating me, probably cost me another $200 in adjacent spending I wouldn't have done otherwise. Let's be conservative and call the subscription's true cost $460. Cost number 5, the home setup that was supposed to save money. This is the part where I tried to be responsible. This is the part where I did the math and made the smart choice. I bought a nice coffee maker, $140. I told myself it would pay for itself in 3 months. I did the calculation on a napkin. If I make coffee at home instead of buying it out, I save $5 per cup. 28 cups, and the machine is free. After that, it's pure savings. Then I bought a grinder because pre-ground coffee doesn't taste as good, and I'd read that freshly ground beans make a real difference. $60. Still worth it, I told myself. Still saving money in the long run. Then I bought a milk frother because I like lattes and I wanted to make them at home instead of paying for them. $40. A latte at a coffee shop is $6. This frother pays for itself in 7 lattes. Then I bought beans. Good beans, because if I'm making coffee at home, I want it to be good. I'm not going to drink bad coffee just to save money. That defeats the purpose. About $25 a month for quality beans from a local roaster. $300 for the year. Then I bought a travel mug so I could take my homemade coffee with me. $25. Then a second travel mug because I kept leaving the first one at work. Another $20. Then I bought a second grinder for my office. Don't ask why this seemed necessary at the time. For $40. Home coffee setup, year 1, $605. Now some of this is one-time cost. The coffee maker and grinder will last years. But the beans are recurring, and the upgrades keep happening. Last month, I started looking at pour-over setups because someone told me it tastes even better. I'm probably looking at $400 a year minimum in home coffee costs going forward. And that's if I stop buying new equipment, which history suggests I won't. And here's the thing that really stings. I still buy coffee out. Every day. The home setup didn't replace my coffee shop habit. It just added to it. Now I make coffee at home in the morning, and I go to a coffee shop in the afternoon for a change of scenery. I didn't save money. I doubled my coffee infrastructure while keeping my coffee shop spending exactly the same. The coffee habit didn't just follow me home. It justified building an entire system around it. Let me add it all up. And this is where the math stops matching how I felt. Base coffee purchases, $1,612. Pastry tax, $351. Social friction. Tips and treating, $505. While I'm here. Lunches, $700. Subscription and behavioral change, $460. Home setup, $605. Wait, that's $4,233. I said $2,847 at the beginning. Here's why the numbers don't match. I'm not counting the home setup in my coffee spending because I mentally categorized it as kitchen equipment. I'm not counting the lunches because I mentally categorized them as food. I'm not counting half the subscription cost because I categorized it as savings. The social friction? That was entertainment or networking. I hid my coffee spending from myself by scattering it across categories where it became invisible. The $2,847 was what I thought I spent on coffee. The number that showed up when I searched coffee in my bank statements. The $4,233 is what coffee actually cost me when I tracked every related purchase, every adjacent behavior, every while I'm here decision. The gap, $1,386, is the invisible cost of a daily habit. Here's what this taught me. The latte factor math is wrong, not because it's made up, but because it only counts the latte. It ignores everything the latte brings with it: the location, the context, the behavior change. The might-as-well psychology that turns a $6 drink into a $20 outing. Coffee isn't expensive because $6 is a lot of money. $6 is nothing. You wouldn't think twice about $6. Coffee is expensive because it's an anchor purchase, a small, justifiable expense that makes everything around it feel equally justifiable. The pastry feels reasonable because you're already spending $6. The lunch feels reasonable because you're already sitting down. The subscription feels reasonable because you're already going every day. Each decision makes sense in isolation, but they compound, and by the end of the year, you've spent $4,000 on a habit you thought cost $2,000. You're not going to stop buying coffee. I'm not going to tell you to stop buying coffee. I didn't stop buying coffee, but I did change how I think about it. Now I track coffee-adjacent spending separately. The pastries, the lunches, the tips, they're their own category, not bundled into food or dining out, where they disappear. Now I set a coffee budget that includes the anchor and the extras. Not just $200 a month for coffee, but $300 a month for everything that happens because of coffee. Now I go to coffee shops for coffee, not for working. If I need a place to work, I go to a library or stay home. The coffee shop is for coffee, 30 minutes, in and out, no lunch menu temptation, and I cancelled the subscription. The math looked good on paper, but it changed my behavior in ways the math couldn't capture. Here's the rule. I wish I'd understood from the start. Daily purchases aren't expensive because of their price. They're expensive because of their frequency and because of everything they bring with them. A $6 coffee doesn't cost $6. It costs $6 plus the pastry, plus the tip, plus the lunch, plus the subscription, plus the equipment, plus the social spending. It costs $6 times whatever multiplier your habits have created. I spent $2,847 on what I thought was coffee. I actually spent $4,233 on a daily ritual and everything it touched. The coffee wasn't the problem. The coffee was just the door. Everything else walked through it. If this breakdown changed how you think about daily spending, subscribe. I make videos about the money traps that hide inside habits you don't even notice, the small purchases that quietly reshape your budget. $6 a day doesn't add up to $2,000 a year. It adds up to $4,000 if you're honest about what you're actually buying.